In fact, the door is closing if you want to be a candidate to run for this office that I'm running to, the door closes on Tuesday at 5 o'clock.
All right.
So you go down there and register if you want to run for office. But I will say one thing. But when you go down there, first off, find out the job description. True. And then look at your own resume.
True.
And see whether or not, in fact, you can apply for the job.
Absolutely.
That's really what that's just basic stuff.
Absolutely.
This is serious stuff. We just can't play the vote for Mickey Mouse anymore. We got some serious problems in our community across the board. You need to know that. And so I'm just saying that's where we are right at this point in time.
Yes,
and a good example of that is that I hand out a brochure. My brochure is very simple. I identify my issues, and on the back side I show my qualifications, my resume.
Yes, you
And I'm just sharing that with you because the people are going to be knocking at the door. They're going to be sending you all kinds of stuff in the mail and this, that, and the other. You want to see the candidate. Besides seeing the candidate, you want to know exactly what they're doing.
Yes, sir.
And put that call number on there so you can talk to them over the phone.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard, if you will, to get somebody to knock at your door before it's time. But they can look at a show like yours, like Pro Folks, and maybe look at mine like Oregon Voters Digest, which, by the way, I'm inviting all the candidates that are running against me to be on the show.
Please.
You got me? It's very, very important.
Yes.
And for an example, today we're going to be talking about on the Oregon Voters Digest, that's my other hat.
Yes.
We're going to talk about an issue that has been plaguing us here in District Number 2. In fact, it's been having an impact on black folks throughout the state of Oregon.
Yes.
And it's the whole issue with the Charlie McGee situation here at the school district. All of a sudden, here's this young man who was running for office, and he got caught up, and they basically implicated the fact that he was a sex offender, whatever kind of a
sex
deal.
offender,
Sex offender. And so all of a sudden, it went down the deal, and he was representing a lot of people, and a lot of people supported him and endorsed him. You got me? Working with the school district, working with moms and kids and this, that, and the other. And then, as you know, we're right in the midst of that Me Too program, Me Too issue with reference to women. You got me? And he got caught up into that whole deal.
Absolutely. And that's how the title affected him, because
it
was affects a verbal assault against a young lady.
Yes, right.
Her daddy just died.
Just died. Pastor Hardy. Pastor Hardy.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the two other icons, the NATO brothers, all of a sudden their relative was involved in the situation with two other young men.
All right.
He was one of the men that basically molested them. But my point is that they've been cited and talked about in both of these two major newspapers, the Tribune, Portland Tribune, and the Willamette Week.
Absolutely.
But they're all free, which is great. It's great to have a free deal. Otherwise, you got to pay for the others.
And the information available to any and everybody, which is free.
Yes, it is. It's free, and it's very. But the reason why we do what we do is that we don't have a medium, if you will, that can communicate to the people about what this issue is all about.
Absolutely.
See, because right now, both of those individuals and he have not said their side of the story.
And we invited them on
and we've
the show
invited
to
them,
speak to the subject matter.
Like
they never showed up.
Like today, my guest for my show when I leave here will be Pastor Matt Hennessy, who's a pastor of Vancouver Avenue Baptist Church.
Amen.
And we're going to talk about this issue with McGee, i.e. the healing process.
Absolutely.
Because in all due respect, all the blacks in the state of Oregon was affected by this issue.
Is there?
See, because we gotta separate ourselves from it. If in fact what's implied that he's done, that needs to be over here.
That's true.
Because otherwise everybody is affected. And we've got a voting process going on now. Who would want to vote to a black if everybody's all in the same situation?
Absolutely.
And people will use that as an excuse not to vote for someone. I'm running for office, and I'm saying I want to address the issues. But the Oregon Voters Digest is addressing issues throughout the state of Oregon. It's not just black. The district is not just black.
That's very true.
The issues across the board. We got issues to deal with. And I don't want them to look at me from the standpoint I'm doing that kind of piece. We'll do this specialized piece, both your show and mine, because in fact, it just so happened they don't talk about these issues. And a lot of times what people are looking for when they see, in all due respect, an African-American male or whomever, if you will, they're looking at, well, can you tell me what the issue is with reference to the African-American community?
Yes.
That's what they want.
That's right.
Not something about, no. They want to hear that. That's important as an addition. So I wear two hats. The Oregon Voters Digest, if you will, was the first blue book in the state of Oregon. See, a lot of folks don't know that. I just bought that. I used to be the publisher owner of the Portland Observer newspaper.
That's wonderful.
And and the Voters Guide, the whole 9 yards. So, I just want to share that with you because, and for instance, here's something today on your voice, your vote, with Steve Dunn.
True.
On Channel 2. He does that about, I think it was about, let's see, what time? 9 o'clock on Sundays, every Sunday.
Yes.
He's a TV reporter. He's an anchor man for Channel 2.
Okay.
And then he does this on a little special show on the side. And today he talked about the issue of the shootings in Florida, in the high schools, okay? And basically brought it to Oregon and introduced a sheriff and another female who was basically talking about what can we talk about in regards to avoiding that kind of situation in our state. And that's what his interview, okay?
That's
now, but then I'm saying, they were talking about that. They were talking about fencing the school in, and they were talking about shelters where people would just run in and it was all secured, all hiring folks, the teachers and this, that, and the other. But guess what? And from my standpoint, in my background, we already had a good process right here in the Portland Public Schools. In the Portland Public Schools, the Portland Public School had their own police force.
That's true.
Remember Matt Lockett?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Matt Lockett.
Well aware.
Yeah, and Harvey Lockett, but Matt Lockett was the chief.
Yes.
He was an African-American male, and they had their own Portland police. They had no problems. Why? Because they basically did a little security around each of the schools in their cars, you know what I mean? But it was Portland schools.
Absolutely.
And then the other component in the Portland Public Schools, we had the custodians. The custodian was that job. They opened up the schools in the morning.
Yes.
They knew who was on campus. They knew if anybody came in, they would confront that person. The teachers could call them to deal with issues, if you will, in their classroom.
Yes.
So my point is, we had the system, but guess what happened? And I had to cover the story in many ways. They got rid of the Portland police for the schools, got rid of it, said it was too much money, okay? And then as far as the custodians, in all due respect, the majority of custodians in management aspect of it, they were basically custodians, senior custodians, were African Americans.
Yes,
you know what they did?
Yes,
you know what they did? And they were both being represented by the SEIU union. They were paying dues. The SEIU union all of a sudden reached out and was hiring undocumented workers to get into the unions.
That's terrible, yes.
And was getting rid of that job. It took us 2 years. Chad Dednam was a chairman of one committee. He called me up and said, Bruce, we got a problem here. Can you possibly represent these custodians? And which I did. And then I called a lobbying buddy of mine back in Salem, a guy named Ted Hughes, got me? And then we kind of got together because in all due respect, I didn't want to just take money just on the, no. It has to be a legitimate operation.
Absolutely.
So the lobbyists had the contract.
Yes.
And I worked for the lobbyists.
Yes.
It was a very clean deal.
Yes.
But the bottom line is that we did shows on this piece, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, several of the custodians died.
That's true.
And then a number of them got their jobs back, but the guy who was Don Strong, he was the guy, the lead African-American custodian that basically took money out of his pocket to pay the attorney. I had another attorney that was there that did as much as he could.
Yes,
But my point is that he worked hard, working with the SEIU, the unions and this, that, and the other. But again, like I said, a lot of them got their jobs back. And this wasn't just black custodians. These were white too. I mean, they were just custodians. They knew their schools. Very important.
Yes.
Now today, we don't have that structure, but it was there. The symbol, a lot of the folks are still there because they want to retire, right? But the fact of the matter is, that's the process that we need here because they knew those schools. They would walk those grounds. I mean, the teachers wouldn't have to worry about coming in the morning by themselves. They opened those doors. They lit up the fire, and whatever, the ovens or whatever, and this, that, and the other. They picked the grounds if there were any needles or drugs or this, that, and the other. If a kid was bullying whatever, guess what? When they show up on the scene, that kid straightened up right off the bat. And then the parent would call them.
Yes.
So my point is that, so the thing I'm getting here is that one thing about government, for some strange reason, it's always about the money. We create these, this, that, and the other. We got to look at what we got. Get the parents involved. The resources we already had. We had good custodians.
Absolutely.
We had a Portland school police. They knew the folks, et cetera, and we had no problem. We don't have that today. See, and we can revisit that overnight. In fact, they can call up Mr. Lockett and get the background on it. They can call up Don Strong and get the background. He's still working for the school district because he's got to make up now for the losses that he had because he represented SEIU. They fought him tooth and nails. Tooth and nails.
Oh, yes.
He should have been promoted a long time ago. But I'm just giving you an example of the fact that you got your voice, your vote. They were doing something in another situation, and I'm sitting there saying, I was aware because of my background of the community, in the district, if you will. I was aware, I know this, so that's why I'm reciting it here on Cecil's show, which shows some sense of assimilation among the divide between black and white. We're just as articulate and creative, and et cetera. This is a community issue. And it's very, very important. So that's why this show is so important.
Absolutely.
That's why my show is very important.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying that on this issue here, you won't see a show like this today, because I've got Pastor Matt Hennessy,
yes,
a local church person who's very active, and he is going to talk about the healing process, even though it's very active right now.
yes.
But we need to talk about this. But the other folks don't talk about it because there's this divide, Otherwise, they're being called a racist or this, that, and the other. We're just fortunate that the Portland Tribune and the Willamette Week, because they're free, they're trying to get their papers, to get their ads and whatever, so they print the story.
Sure. How do you heal a community that's sick, and how do you do that?
Well, in all due respect, like I said, in this situation, we got to separate this issue. He's got to go through a process through the legal system and this, that, and the other. That's over here. Mm-hmm. But don't blame the entire community. That's what I'm saying. See, the entire community is being blamed, if you will. There's some issues there. But in our system of government, you have the right, if you will, to be represented in court and say your side. He or the other gentleman have not shared their side. The only side we have seen in the papers was just one way. Now naturally people get caught up with this kind of, well, gee whiz, it's appearing in the Portland Tribune, they're a bunch of racists, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, no, these are the facts. Unless the gentleman come out, because I reached out. I reached out to his father, I reached out to him. But he was still in the denial. No, that didn't happen. Well, well then come on the show. Come on, Cecil show.
Yeah,
come over here and just tell me. Well, the attorney won't let me. Well, hey, look, if you're right, you said.
Right.
If you're wrong, you know the difference between right and wrong.
Absolutely.
Yes. Don't sit up there and wait for the legal process to take place maybe 6 months down the road. The key's been thrown about that. You're just going to jail.
Yeah. Speak
Do
your
not
heart.
pass.
What's
What Monopoly says? Do not pass go, do not collect $100, go direct to jail.
Absolutely.
I mean, I hate to put it that way, but this is a serious situation because it's involving everybody and it's disrupting our process. And we got some serious problems. Like you said, we got the homeless situation here. We need jobs. In fact, I'm going to be doing, there was another, and I get a lot of my articles from here. The whole issue of a sanctuary city. We're a sanctuary state. Well, they did an article, if you will, on, they did an article on sanctuary city, meaning that the state passed the law that it'd be but now there's a group of people that say, hey, no, we're going to come up with get the signature and we want to disband that law. That's okay. So talk about it. So guess who's going to interview? I'm going to interview the people that's running that piece. But we're fortunate because one of the people that's running for that seat happens to be a Mexican-American woman.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Maria Garcia. And so I'm going to invite her to come on Cecil's show and my show with the other woman that deals about the sanctuary city and justify the existence.
Yes.
Because both sides has a cause.
Have them speak their
and
heart.
So throw it out there on the table. And whatever comes out good for the best and respect for other citizens and the best for our state,
Absolutely.
That's who we go with.
That's right.
But the bottom line, you don't hide it. You don't just go back here and this, that, and the other. So I'm just saying, but based on that, we're going to have a show and it won't be able to see it anywhere else other than Cecil and mine. So
There will be a call-in?
Does that make sense? Oh, yeah.
Oh,
see,
for sure.
Calling anything in, see? So look here, I'm going to go on and get prepared. I've said enough. I'd really like to hear about what you got to say, Mom. Got me? Gordon, got me?
Yeah.
So, but you guys can discuss.
That goes back, we were discussing a little bit about the homelessness and a little bit about what's going on around the community and how sick the community is. I mean, and now it's actually boiled to the topic, you can't hide it anymore. And I think really where it goes down to is the capitalistic society is now, what we're seeing is the underbelly that you can't hide anymore. It's so fat. The machine is so fat that it's there and now it's up to us. And a lot of the people in our community don't want to take responsibility or they don't want to throw anything at it. But I think in order to take care of some of this, I think it really does go to us, the community members that pay taxes, that go to work. And I mean, it's just what it is. You know, I mean, there's people out there that Reagan threw out. He threw them out. And they've never come back in. They're walking around defecating everywhere, and we have to walk through that on a daily basis. You know,
Gordon, you make a good point. I'll just real quick, that's one of the reasons why I'm running. See, ordinarily the process says those are our leaders.
Absolutely.
We elect these folks. That's why the election process is so important. We elect these leaders, even on this issue here. a lot of this thing could have been avoided. He shouldn't have run. They knew there are a lot of the elected officials who are elected today from that community, and we know who they are. Got me? They knew. They should have approached this young man and say, look here, there's no sense in you running. Or if not that, the system should have had in the application process, by the way, if you've done any of these kind of things in your past, you can't run. Or something to that effect.
That's very true.
But nobody said anything. So it's gone this far, and the impact that it's had on this community, the number of people, plus the fact he had a good program. Now all of a sudden, guess what? The program's going to go.
Well, and you have to look at the individual. I mean, maybe he's guilty and he gets what he deserves.
Yeah,
I mean,
but please don't do it on our time. Yeah, right? Yeah, you can, but go put it over here, and then let us continue to live. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. We don't need this kind of divide in a black and white thing.
True.
It's got to be respectful. It's all of us.
Right.
You know, it's all of us together.
Right.
So that's, again, like I said, this is district number 2. I'm not speaking out of somebody that doesn't have any past and background and sensitivity and compassion for something that I'm doing. Got my point? I'm running for the district because I'm familiar with a lot of the issues.
So what are some of the things that you're thinking about doing with this issue of the homelessness? That's
well, like I said,
wants to be responsible for.
Like I said right up front with you, we need to know who's on the street. I mean, they still haven't settled selling the Wapato jail. They've given an extension to this particular person who supposedly bought it, but we found out that, you know, hey, we haven't gotten the money yet. So he's looking at probably trying to find someone to develop it. That's a very neat facility. For $1 million, we could rehab this whole thing, and all of a sudden you can take, let's see, right off the bat, 500 people off the street. And then there's enough land out there to put some tents or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's a controlled environment.
That's very true.
To find out exactly who's on the street. And then, because the county is the jailer. The police department are basically just picking them up.
Right.
You got me?
Right.
So that's a difference. So I'm going to be a county person, so guess where I'm going to be hitting the first day on the door? I'm doing it now. I want them to say, stop the deal. Hey, look, it's there. Put it back in our coffers. Let's go on and get the monies to get rehab and take all those people off the street.
Well, and how do you get them to go when they don't want to go? A lot of those people are there because they want to be there. A lot of those people make good money doing what they do, or at least feed their lifestyle that they want to live.
Well, as one would say, help them out. See, beforehand, you couldn't just look at an individual next to a store, throwing stuff on the street, and they say, hey, you got that right. But on the other hand, that same person can go into the store and steal a chicken, and the cop will be there to pick him up.
Absolutely, yes.
And guess what he gets? Roof over their head, get their food, clean clothes, take a bath, just like that. We used to have a law that you couldn't litter.
I know, I can't.
See, guess what? Reinstate that law. If that's what it takes to help him out, because a lot of those folks are homeless. And the mental illness. We used to have mental illness. It's called damage. Remember damage?
Oh,
it was out in the Beaverton area.
Right.
But the developers came in, took that property, and now damage, the people are on the street. They're on the street. The same thing with
they turned it into a jail.
They turned it into jail.
So do you have any statistics on how many people are actually out there because they want to be out there? That's a lifestyle that they want to live.
That's what I'm talking about. We got to take them off the street.
They
don't either. They just tell us anything about, well, it costs us so much to do this, and I'm still seeing the people.
Right.
I'm still seeing the people suffering. I'm still seeing families that are on the street, and I can't do anything about it. It's sort of like insulting to a certain degree. A man with a family, and he's out there on the street.
But you see 8 or 9 cranes downtown Portland right now.
Oh, yeah.
That's huge money. That's huge investment into the community, but I don't see any structures for anybody that makes $500 a month living. You know, I don't see any rent that is there for
the people. Well, we need low income. Wait, okay. But the bottom
line, the low income is, these places are for sale for $250,000. That's not low income. We're talking $500 a month rent, $450 a month rent that allows them to. Where is that? Where are some of these demands for the developers?
Who issues the permit to allow them to build that building in the city? The mayor of Portland and the city council. So the name of the game is, guess what? If I was sitting up there, I would have said point blank, I want so many units there, low income with these kind of numbers.
And with that, we'll give you these kinds of tax breaks to develop whatever you want in the Parole.
But my point is, but you got to make that decision because we want the development aspect of it. to benefit everybody. I don't want to knock business out of the way. You just have to have someone responsible enough that have done it before. I built the senior citizen complex, a 38-unit complex right in the back of the, on Killsworth and MLK called Walnut Park. Absolutely. I built that, low income. I did that. I provided homes and used my credit, if you will, to allow people to get home ownership. And my entree way to get to that point was first month, last month, cleaning deposit was a down payment.
So how do we give incentive to some of these people to get out of these zombie RVs? And because they're making such a, I figured what it is these zombie RVs are the hub, and then they send their people out and they just go through all your backyards and they come back to the zombie RV.
That's why you gotta, my friend,
they love it.
That's why you gotta pick them up, help them out. Help them out. I'm gonna help them out.
But we have a constitution, right?
Yeah.
You have to do something
but guess what? The Constitution is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Right.
I understand that. I'm a people person.
Absolutely.
So it's my government. It's your government. It's your government. I'm not gonna sit up there and allow someone who I've elected to office act as if they're the king. No. I'm the employer. They're the employee. And I'm saying here I am looking at being an employee. And I'm saying I can do the job. And if we don't have it on the book to do it, and dealing with people humanely, because I want to be treated the same way. I could be in the same situation as a homeless situation, but right now they can't help themselves. And the leadership has to do that. That's why we need to vote the right people in.
Yeah.
And that's
they are helping themselves, everybody's backyards and all their little stuff.
They can't do that anymore. That's my property. They can't do that mine.
I'm running out of I'm running out of empathy for a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, but my point is that's why I'm saying that's why this is a very, very important election.
It is a very important election.
You got to go out and vote, and you got to make sure these people do their job right.
Yep.
That's a very important piece.
Yep.
Well, look, I've said a lot. Let Gordon keep doing this talking. I'm gonna get out of here.
I'm very happy you came on the show, brother.
It's a pleasure. Okay, I'll see you next week.
Is always there.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get those folks. I have some folks running for office next week.
Yes. Well, please come on this show and
always a pleasure.
Let them be on this show to get their message out as well.
Gordon, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for being here. Appreciate it.
I'll be more than glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Brother Bruce.
Good job, Cecil.
Okay. Have a blessed day, all you people out there, Popo Community for Justice, all of you out there watching. So the show will continue. And Brother Gordon, please let the people know what's on your heart.
Well, if anybody wants to call in, and let's talk about issues that we're seeing out there. There's a lot of homelessness going on right now. We've got a lot of government bureaucracy that's slowing people down and getting things done. You've got a lot of injustice and people being unfair out there. And you know, I've been going through a little bit of some personal issues over the last couple years. You know, I've been a co-parent for a number of years, and been stay-at-home father for, you know, for all my 12 years of my kids' lives, and it's been a blessing. It's been great to be able to do that, and try to be sustainable and self-sufficient and trying to live within myself, you know, and I've been trying to do that for a number of years now. And but in the last year, I went through a divorce, and you know, those are pretty tough, you know, and going through the system of divorce there's not a lot of fairness. I'm starting to see as I get into my late 40s and into 50s that it's not fair out there. And you know, and I'm just realizing in the sense that, you know, it's really important that kids have both parents, even if they're going through divorces and stuff. You know?
That's true. That's very
true. And there's a lot of manipulation of the system. There's a lot of bias, and there's a lot of pain that wants to be thrown around. And going through that system, you see some injustices I've been seeing, that, you know, the women tend to get favored in the system, and no matter what the father does, a lot of it is not looked upon and taken in consideration for, you know, certain matters. So I've been finding that the system isn't the best out there for men, and it's really frustrating, because trying to get through the system and trying to make change so the men can be taken more seriously, it takes time and a lot of energy. But so, you know, and through that, they say that after divorce, most people go through bankruptcy and doing all this stuff. So I found a way to buffer myself coming from this whole different way of being, and started being sustainable, started working with a person on a half-acre of land and put up some geodesic domes, and started paying for my way through working for the Airbnb and making this guy all kinds of money, and living my utopia, and licking my wounds after coming out of this divorce and what have you. And then I ended up, the one thing that I saw that was really putting me, and this ties into the homelessness, is this was putting me in a situation where I wanted to live in my geodesic dome. I wanted to live in my garden. I wanted to grow my medicine. I wanted to grow my food, but I also didn't want to be part of the capitalistic society. I didn't want to have to go to a 9-to-5 job and work for some guy that doesn't appreciate who I am and doesn't give me the kind of value financially and emotionally that I deserve for coming in and making this individual a lot of money to allow his lifestyle to be. So here I come into this capitalistic society. I'm making the millennials a bunch of money. We're flipping the Airbnb. I'm living my way. You know, no cash is coming out of my pocket. I'm making money doing my side work, doing my passion work, creating gardens, and bringing in money to cover my child support. And you know, and then all of a sudden, the millennial group family that I was with ran their Airbnbs into the ground.
Oh, that's sad.
We made them $40,000 in 1 year just running this Airbnb. And they come back through and they never got the permits. They got all kinds of liens on their land. So right at that point, they gave me a 24-hour notice, and it took 90 days to create my utopia, to actually just have a foundation to go and have water and your composting toilet and a deck for the domes. And you know, we only stayed in the dome once or twice a week or whatever when the units were empty. But when we did that, they made it illegal to camp in your backyard like a month before we ended up going to the next door to the land. But we had these beautiful domes that are rated for 300 pounds of snow. They're rated for the Arctic, you know, they're beautiful, they're light, you know, but, you know, it was conflict. So at the end of this, they come back and give me a 24-hour notice to get out. And it's like, wait a second, we just made you $40,000. We just took care of your property. Right. We took care of all this. You come back from going around the world, spending all the money, and now you're done with this.
That's sad.
Well, that was like, wait a second. I've never been homeless. I don't want to be homeless. I've been taken care of, but I'm trying to live this thing that I've been fighting for all these years by starting up a nonprofit called the Center for Sustainable Today. We had a number of television shows on cable about sustainable, you know, sustainability, called Sustainable Today and stuff. And here I'm actually living to be sustainable, but I'll tell you what, the friction from the neighbors and their own egos and from what they were driving themselves through their capitalistic goggles, they didn't find, which I was on some of the most sustainable neighborhoods in the community, and they were still unable to see this organism growing, this thing that people are coming over and seeing, wow, you can actually do this on the land. You can actually see your composting, you know, you can see how your fecal matter functions in your composting, and where you can use it with your produce and or not your produce, but your fruits and all this stuff like that. And so all of a sudden I found myself on the verge of homelessness.
That's sad.
And it's like, wait a second. And I go over to my child support and I say, oh, hey, you know, there's some stuff going on. And they said, well, we can't help you. We can't do anything for you. You're too new in the system. Your ex-wife has done a good job tainting our opinion through the manipulation that she was allowed to go through. And so, you know, we're not going to budge for you.
Oh, that's terrible. And the wife did that.
And the ex-wife did, well, with her, you know, her own movie screen that she was living in and her own world that she was creating for herself. She has her own opinion of stuff. And so she went ahead and used what a lot of women use through the system to gain control of the children. So You know, so I think at the end, a lot of children suffer through that whole case. But as I was going through this whole divorce and then trying to get my, you know, I was paying my child support and all this stuff, but I got bamboozled somehow and blah, blah, blah. So now what's happening is I have a little bit of garnishment. So I finally got myself a real job. I've been working, you know, at home for years. I get myself a real job, and then I finally move to where I work, which is really great. And I'm finding that it's more sustainable now where I'm at. But being in a community environment and not having to travel very far to go to work and stuff like that. But through my work, I'm a painter, and during the summers, and I also do gardens and stuff, my income goes down during the winter. And the child support wasn't very happy about that, and they were not willing to work with me. And so I said, well, listen, if you take 50% of what I make, I'm not going to even have enough to pay my rent. They go, well, we don't care. We don't care. We want the 50%. We want it the 120% rears, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, wait a second, you're going to put me on the street. And there's nothing that we can do about it. That's what it is. So all of a sudden there's like, okay, you got to fight real hard, which you can, show your children how to dig yourself out of this mess. Right. Be the man that you're supposed to be, do the fatherly thing, do the thing that you never had done for yourself, be the father you never had. I understand. But there's no zone, there's no net there for situations of income variables and, you know, and how your income changes, and they don't change with it. And so as I ride, now I don't drive because I don't want to drive. I ride my bike, and I do all my businesses by bike. I paint houses by bike, and I only go within 5 miles of my house, and it works out really great. But I ride and I see all these people on the side of the roads with their house, with their children, and all these tents, and it was like, and I'm like, I'm right there on the edge of being with them. And there's so many of those people out there that are right on the edge of being there.
That have lost their homes and property.
Just like that.
Because the system's not trying to work with them.
It's not working with them.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't have any movement. It's not allowed to, like the spine, once it gets fused together, there's no movement. But when your discs are real flowy and you got nice, good, solid back, it takes a lot of movement and abuse, right? But there's no movement with government. There's not very much, and it's not, and they're creating the problems. They're creating the homelessness, a lot of it.
Well, I know where Donald Trump's got over $1 trillion. At least that's what he's saying, that we have $1 trillion. How does it not help people like yourself and myself? Well, that's a lot of money.
Well, I haven't seen that $1 trillion. Other than it's
nobody's seen it except for it's been the conversation he's been holding for over the year that he's been in office as president.
Well, all that money that he gets for going down to Florida and going and flying around could be used for homelessness and
some of that money
clinics
used for homelessness. Right. But he's talking about opioids and things of this nature. But
those are all symptoms from what's going on, and the ultimate death of a relationship is, is capitalism. Capitalism doesn't have any compassion. It doesn't have any empathy for anybody.
No, it doesn't.
And that's how you create wealth, is by your failure.
Well, and people's failures are tons of drugs, bodies are wrecked or torn from the floor up, and now they got the fine language is saying, well, if they're caught up on opioids, you got a way of getting the money to go to the hospital to get well, or whatever resources that they have available to burn that money up. But the people that still use crack, there's no title for using crack, cocaine, or any other kind of drugs. And so they are using crack cocaine as a justification to throw people in jail and throw away the key. But if you're using opioids, it's a fancy way of saying as long as you're legally using drugs and you legally have an avenue to go down that path, then we got plenty of money available to your situation. Not to make you a better person, but to address that issue or needs that you have.
Well, that takes me back to having community. You have to have a nice, strong community that isn't judging you and is taking responsibility for its neighbors and taking responsibility for themselves. And and so I was up in a place called North Cully in the next door in the Ainsworth community for 10 years, and it's one of the most sustainable up there. But I'll tell you, it's still spotted with judgments, and it's still spotted with old paradigm thought processes.
Yes.
Here you have half-acre lots, and what they want to do is they want to infill, which is fine, I guess, infilling, but when is infilling needs to stop to have community spaces to be able to gather and to socialize and to come up with solutions to problems and issues. And so that's what I liked about that community, but also there's a lot of judgment going on there. There's a lot of hypocrisy, and I think we deal with hypocrisy every day. I think we live in a contradicting world that's full of hypocrites,
yes.
And we see Trump every day being a full-blown hypocrite. And,
that's true.
And, so I think as we come back into this whole thing, I think really taking power and control of your own life and I try to say this easily, but my girlfriend now, my partner, just got diagnosed with Graves' disease. And she's very sick, and she is so depressed that she just doesn't have any energy and to be happy or to cook a meal or to go do the laundry or whatever because of this whole thing that's been happening all her life. But so when I look to her and say, okay, well, it's easy enough to think positive and go out and look for a job and do all that stuff, they go to the opioids, they go to depression, they go to this place because, number one, OHP doesn't give a crap about what's going on. They don't want to, we've been dealing with the medical issues, and we don't see them doing anything other than just dealing with your quick symptom. There's no
quick fix it drug.
Just a quick fix. There's no finding what's causing the issue. You get lost in this dialogue with these people that are paid to look at computer screens. There's no, and so, now you have this sickness that just builds and builds because they won't see you, because they think you're crazy.
Yes.
I'm hurting, but you're crazy. You're not hurting. No, yes, and it's just back and forth, and a year later, well, maybe I am crazy.
Yes, because you're buying at face value.
Right, and then now on the verge of being homelessness. And then once you go into that spiral, then no one gives a crap. No one.
That's true.
From what there's a few people out there that care, but really we're so caught up with our life and trying to pay our rent and making sure that our kids stay out of trouble that we just don't have the energy and the empathy to give out there anymore.
That's true.
Right.
It used to be at one time where it used to be people could pay $3 or $4 rent, and the people that own the property would get the majority of the money for themselves. But those times have passed. So instead of after the system caught on to saying, well, we can pocket all the money. So now it's like just find some wheeler and dealers to write up bogus contracts and trick people into selling their property or making loans against their property and doing all this evil behavior. The system turned a blind eye to that, because that's what basically I've been faced with. Because I have property and I'm trying to sue U.S. Bank and Aquin Federal Loan and everyone else, and the people that tried to make a bogus loan to me, and trying to bring those people to justice. But I still have my property and control of my property. But a lot of people have made various loans with people, and the people have made bogus loans with me, and then trying to get you to put your initials on a piece of paper, and that's all a bunch of crap. And the system is designed and set up to try and steal your land. but I bought my land close to 50 years ago, so everything is legitimate from my standpoint, and it's on paperwork, and then all the lies these people put together and put it on paper.
That's all they read is paper. They can't see outside the words.
Yeah, and that's where my case is at.
Yeah.
The paper is bogus and needs to bring these people to justice, but nobody's saying that you try and get a hold of the FBI, they try to talk negative, and you try and get a hold of the police, they try and talk negative. But I bring the issue up in my case all the time for years, and then they try and treat you like, well, maybe he'll drop dead or do something crazy, but I won't.
That's what they wait for you to die.
Yeah, that's the whole scam that they're trying to run.
Social Security disability,
18,
they put
yes.
you through the system to wait for you to die before they give you your money.
Or
get you
trying not give you no money.
And they don't want you any money, so now you're on the homeless. There's not a lot of preventative measures, you know. So here I come out and I say, okay, I'm going to prevent myself from going on to that. I'm going to prevent myself from filing bankruptcy after my divorce. I'm going to prevent myself from falling behind on my child support. I'm going to prevent myself from going in debt and taking on all this stress so I can maybe feel bad, give myself a coronary or something in the future. So what I did is I went ahead and I found a deal next to the place that I lived at. I lived in this 4-bedroom house, quarter acre for 10 years. Next door neighbor had the half acre. I've been watching it, wanting to garden on it for years. They finally came and said, listen, we're going to do this. I said, I can make you a lot of money and get what I need out of this. And you know what was really interesting is the city came out multiple times because they were called by my neighbors because they were just rude, and they actually had more problems with the owner of the land doing the Airbnb than it was with me being in the backyard. But I was only back there because, well, I know how to be there, and I had everything that I needed, you know.
And you doing everything correctly.
And I did everything correctly. And the city wasn't, they were fine with it. They loved the gardens. They saw everything, and they saw how you could be sustainable. But I'll tell you what I was doing is, it takes education, and you need to educate people, because we've got issues with fecal matter all over the city, and if we're not careful, we're going to turn out to just be like LA with E. coli everywhere, and we're going to be all getting sick, and we're all going to be, if we don't get under control, we're going to be walking through this and carrying it into our houses. I mean, it's everywhere now. You have to educate people on how to, that's the number one thing. Even if you have the homelessness, at least teach them and give them the resources to compost their own fecal matter. At least give them access some human dignity to use the bathroom in a efficient, proper way. And once you start adding some dignity to these people, and they don't feel like they're putting to an animalistic situation, they start building some dignity, and they start getting some help, true, real help, not no BS, oh, well, you're going to talk to Sue, and Sue's going to talk to Jerry, and they never talk back to, and then now you're caught in this system, and again, you're still the same way you were 9 months ago, you know, and so, you know, we've got to stop these people from having to feel like they need to steal from their neighbors, because what we have is we have poor stealing from the poor.
Oh, that's true.
And that's what needs to stop, is we got to stop it. We got to change that and let them have common dignity and decency.
Well, if they're using the bathroom on the land, that's what you're saying. If you got
you can teach people how to deal with it.
Food that you're growing, and people are using the bathroom in the midst of it.
Yeah, in India, for example, in India, the average person in India eats 1.5 pounds of fecal matter a year.
Oh, that's horrible.
Because they go everywhere. It's on all the food. It's on all the plants. It's on everywhere. They walk through it. It's everywhere. And so what we have is we have this situation right now happening in Portland. It's happening in Seattle. What we have is we have a epidemic, a soon to be epidemic that we're all going to be forced to have to reckon with and deal with in the future. But why should we do that now? What we need to do is we need our communities to start coming together. And if we're going to allow people to live in the backyard, give them the kind of structure that they need, and also the background checks. And we're doing that now, because what was interesting is I had to move off that land.
Yes.
And the month that I moved is the month they said, well, you can bring your tiny homes into the backyard now.
Oh, wow.
And you can do all this stuff. It's like, wait a second, I just was going to buy a tiny home. I was putting it back here for another 4 years so I can you know, go off into my own land or whatever. And, you know, so so the city, it was fine. Then the city said it wasn't. And then it was like fine again. And so it was like, okay, well, isn't there something that we can do that's common? There's a common thread all the way through the fine and not so fine. Isn't there some kind of, we need to come up with some kind of a education for number one, for dealing with their fecal matter.
Right.
And dealing with their disposal of drugs, and dealing with the dehumanization, because that's ultimately what we have now, is we have a dehumanization of a human person that has feelings, that has emotions, that really, you could say, okay, their career, but in truth, they really didn't want to be where they were at a long time ago.
That's true.
You know, and so, you know, things are going to need to change, and the money's going to have to change. We got to change the money system and the way we, you know, and we got to start taking upon ourselves, say, you know what, it's not all about me. Yeah, I have bills. You know, I've got this big house, but I think it all comes down to just living amongst your own means and not getting too far out there, like the Trump thing with the taxes. Here, everybody thinks they have all this money, and they're all spending and getting a little bit bigger than they were. And then in 7 years, all of a sudden, everybody's got bigger mortgages, and they got bigger toys, and they have all this stuff. And then in 7 years, all those tax breaks are going to disappear, and everybody's going to be in bigger houses with bigger bills, and all that extra money's gone. And it's like, okay, now what? Now you have despair, you have insecurity, you have, you know, last straw kind of behavior, man. This is the last straw. This is breaking me down to where I'm now tapping into my monkey brain, my animalistic brain, and then that's when people suffer. Is when you force a society and a person to get into that space of the monkey brain, back inside there.
Right.
That's when you have a bad society. That's when your society is really sick. And then to sit there and have a monkey as a president stand in front of us and say he wants to have no term limits, just like China. He wants to kill drug dealers just like Indonesia. I mean, are we what is going, we're sick.
We're not. That's how sick he sounds. And
he's a reflection of our core being, of our society.
Right.
Right? He's a reflection of what's going on in our society. And what's going on in our society is a reflection of the mother sick. The Mother Earth is sick, and we are just an extension of her. And what we see is ultimately what's going on in our mother, our planet. Our planet's sick. Our people are becoming sick, and we need to start caring about our planet. We need to start caring about our environment, and in order to do that, we got to start giving these people places to use the bathroom, giving them a sense of dignity, and somehow give them some responsibility with a little bit of credit somewhere where they can go in and use their credits to buy stuff maybe or whatever because they cleaned up part of the highway, you know, or something like that, you know. I don't know. I was thinking about maybe even getting rid of the pop and bottle tax or the 20 cents, because that just creates now it's an income now for people.
For buying, for picking up bottles. I think that's 10 cents a piece, things of that nature. It's generating revenue for some people, but it should be a lot of more ways for them to generate revenue.
Well, opening up that place, what Broussard was talking about, opening up that old jail that never got used and making that more of a social services place for the homeless, and
hopefully if they could create work where tons of people can generate work to make themselves money to be able to feed themselves or care for themselves would help a lot. We're trying to see how Bruce Broussard, I wish he'll be back soon, but when he comes, he speaks on the subject matter very intelligently. Of people being able to generate revenue or to do what's right. It's like Donald Trump be making those forecasting, well, the 10% and the 25% steel and the 10% in aluminum, and then he was making it like he was going to bring a bunch of countries over to the United States, and then after that he was backbiting his conversation or making it sound like, well, it'll be like 10% and 25% would cost people when talking about less money to have steel and aluminum here, and when people are here, and those cans that we make or buy from other countries at a real good price, that we can do really great things. So the conversation totally flipped around after Trump had finished speaking. And I'm listening to this, oh, thank you very much, 5 minutes, this ridiculous conversation he had. And he was speaking as if he was inviting a bunch of countries over, people coming to the United States, and we were going to be rolling money in 25% of the people and making it sound like 10% of the people. And then it sounded at the end, when the people tried to clean up what Trump had said, he was making it sound like it was 10% and 25% of what people would be spending when it came to pop cans and how much money or whatever we had, and then aluminum and things of this nature. And then after Trump had finished having this hellacious conversation, he was talking about we got to start, people have to be able to be 21 to buy guns, and police people that are like ex-service people, giving them guns and making sure that they're well trained and operating and knowing weaponry, and then the conversation is, well, he started backtracking on that. So it's like a whole bunch of lip service in the end.
Yeah, it's just a fleecing of our treasury. It's just a fleecing of everything that we have, and they're trying to take our souls away. They're trying to demoralize us, and that's their game, is to demoralize, step on us, demoralize us. And when we have community and we have people that are trying to educate people, so we can take advantage of these green spaces, and we can put people in that do want to live outside. I like living outside. Oh, I do.
Go ahead.
I would love it. But the city and the neighbors, and there's just not a program there. There's not an education system there that says, okay, this is what we're going to do. If you have a half acre, a quarter acre, and you have the space and you have the education to deal with your waste and educate. And I think we need to start educating and allow people to have spaces to go, but it needs to be monitored, and we maybe need to pay a little bit. I mean, shoot, we got all that big tax breaks, and then what did Trump do? He came in and gave us a gas tax and took the tax break away. So what's another 2 cents from us? And what's another 2 cents for tax? I mean, we're going to have to look deeper within ourselves here. We have to look deeper within ourselves and start getting out of our ego, and really, we have to get outside of ourselves, be more open to more radical ideas, but also require the information and the facts to be presented so we can do sound solutions to the issues of government deafness of the government, the unwillingness of society to take care of others. We need to start educating some more, and we need to start showing compassion towards these people that are suffering, but also, we do need to require that they kind of help work themselves out. We can only give so much without them putting in too, or it's just not going to work. So, but we can't jail everybody.
No, you can't. You can't jail everybody. Then you got people that bought a home, and with all these floods and different things happening, the government only gave them $5,000 and spent over $13 billion in some change. But I'm just saying the evil things that are going on. Well, it look like we're about a minute and 43 seconds. What do we have, a minute and 43 seconds?
Yep.
Oh,
well, I appreciate you having me on and me just kind of babbling along. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on. You're welcome to come back next week.
Okay.
Or I think next week it's going to be another show, so we probably won't be on next week. But after that, on the 18th, we'll be back. And you're welcome to come on the show and speak your heart to whatever subject you choose to speak. If Bruce shows up, you know, he's welcome. I'm always inviting him to come on because he's running for office. I don't want him to get his message out, but I want you to come on the show.
I hope Broussard deals with this homelessness, and I hope he really works with the building community that builds things, you know, and helps us out a little.
Okay, we're rolling off. Thank you.